Having no appropriate feedback from South Africa government, we went ahead to lodge an official complaint to South African Human Rights Commission, South Africa Council of Churches, Office of Directorate of Priority Crime Investigation, Judge and Independent Police Investigative Directorate, raising the concerns we established and also highlighting the death threats on Bushiri, especially those emanating from personal. So, let me repeat. Raising the concerns we established and also highlighting the death threats on Bushiri, especially those emanating from the personnel working with the Hawks. The complaint included the names of officers involved, audios and file evidence to the same allegations. Part of our complaint was a demand that the South African government must guarantee justice and fair treatment towards Bushiri, and the named state officers must be recused from investigating Bushiri on any related legal issues. To our surprise, the bodies only acknowledged receiving the complaints and gave it a file number ODJ 218-07-2018, but did not take any further steps to address the complaints therein. Despite numerous follow-ups to the offices, in May 2020, the DPCI office communicated to Bushiri to get hold of us, alleging that we were not reachable. We immediately sent a response and made a direct contact to the investigating officers, and even requested them to allow us to make the presentation in person to their offices. They only promised to come back to us and requested that we provide to them the power of attorney for them to carry out investigations, which we gave them on the 7th August 2020. In October, we engaged the investigating officers who simply advised us that they will summon us when we will be needed. Ironically, 2 days later, Prophet Shepherd Bushiri and his wife Mary were arrested. And to our disbelief, part of the arresting team included officers alleged by Bushiri to be the ones behind the threats and extortion scheme. Events surrounding Bushiri. After the first arrest of Bushiri and his wife in 2019, and the latest arrest, we have noted a lot of events which we would like to highlight here. 1. We sadly note that Bushiri is being tried by the media. 2. Several government officials have publicly displayed their disliking of Bushiri to the extent of calling for him to go back to Malawi. 3. Several institutions and religious bodies and leaders have publicly attacked and called on South Africans to rise against Bushiri and his church. 4. State machinery has allowed the public and influential individuals, including religious leaders, to entice the state and judiciary to act against Bushiri. For instance, South Africa religious leader named Bolo was quoted on national television just before a bail ruling of the leader of Bushiri, claiming that he did not want to get bail. He did not want Bushiri to get bail, but since he was approached by family of Bushiri, he will allow the bail to happen. And ironically, the same day, 4th November 2020, the Bushiris got bail. 5. South African government officials, included ministers, have publicly commented to matters in court, including calling Bushiri a criminal who must face the music. 6. Freezing Bushiri's account for over a year on matters they still claim they are investigating. 7. And the last, a deliberate effort by government officials to tarnish the image of Bushiri and raise public anger against him. The above and many other events confirms the notion that there has been a high level of conspiracy to deal with Bushiri, and what's come out clearly is the term they are using, Bushiri must come to face the music. This, in our view, is a clear manifestation that he is not wanted for justice, but to face the music as they are putting it. Our understanding of motivations for Bushiri to return to Malawi. As a civil society movement, we have analyzed and understood Prophet Shepherd Bushiri's decision to return to Malawi as he faced numerous threats and attempts on his life as presented. The allegations and threats on Bushiri must not be taken lightly, especially in the country which has got one of the highest crime rates in the world. We strongly believe there can never be a trial of Bushiri in his absence. We need him alive to answer the charges and justice be seen to be delivered. For now, we would like to call on South African government not to twist issues and change the whole persecution towards his movement from South Africa, but rather address issues that would ensure safety of Bushiris and their right to a fair and just trial is not violated. Failure by the South African government to investigate and address the complaints raised by Bushiri and subsequent complaints on the same from civil and human rights activists from Malawi renders the whole justice process unfair and unfavorable for the Bushiri and does not guarantee safety and rights of the same and might lead to an impartial trial in South Africa. Malawi government passive role. While the Malawi government has adopted a non-interference stance on matters of law, it is saddening to note that both the previous Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, and the current Malawi Congress Party, MCP governments have chosen to take a let's-see approach on Prophet Bushiri's matter. It is sad that a person of Bushiri's stature can have a sole and lone fight against the gigantic Republic of South Africa at all levels without his country's intervention. This is very sad and unfortunate. We are worried that if the government cannot intervene on a person like Bushiri, then thousands of Malawians living in South Africa and elsewhere are being condemned by their own country. Our cause. As civil society in Malawi, we feel inclined to make the following critical and key demands to the two nations in so far as the attainment of rights and freedoms for Bushiri and any other Malawian under investigation is concerned. 1. Malawi government should ensure that all conditions towards guaranteeing the Bushiri's safety, rights and impartial hearing are put in place, and that should include a written undertaking to take responsibility and ownership of anything that may befall the Bushiris while in the country. 2. The South African government must announce the immediate withdrawal of all persons Bushiri raised a complaint against and ensure the prosecution team is led by neutral and independent persons, and in particular, racial consideration of its composition should be a must, and that of the judging panel. 3. Malawi government should not be coerced for any extradition request before the above security and justice concerns are addressed by the South African government. 4. In an event of full compliance by the South African government, Malawi should assign its personnel to, among others, enjoin the Bushiri team to ensure that the national interests are protected in the full trial as it resumes. 5. We further call on South African government and Malawi government to ensure that no Malawian loses his or her rights in South Africa for being associated or a follower of the Bushiris, including any loss of property. 6. Malawi and South African should ensure that their officials should respect the rule of law and stop prejudicing Bushiris through careless public addresses devoid of united and coherent government position. The civil society movement in Malawi would like to state that it shall not allow Malawi government to be buried by South African over Bushiri's matter. We are aware of South Africans who have left the country have never been followed or accounted for, yet they committed worse offenses against the state and its people. We will not allow the Bushiri's matter to be magnified for interest of the few individuals in South Africa. We commit to engage both the Malawi and South African governments to ensure the fully granted and realization of rights by Malawian citizens. In the spirit of our mandate, we commit to promote and protect the interests of indigenous persons for them to enjoy their full rights. We further commit to raise public awareness on the issues surrounding this case and the ramification it has on the entire public. MABREM is a national network of progressive civil society organizations pushing for the Black empowerment agenda, and it comprises the academia, media, lawyers, human rights activists, business gurus, politicians, as well as indigenous persons, among other interest groups. It is chaired by the Malawi Human Rights Consultative Committee, and this network has over 97 NGOs and CSOs on human rights, governance, rule of law, and democratic governance, with a Forum for National Development (FND) as its secretariat. Signed by Robert James Kwezalamba, chairperson, on behalf of the 97 plus NGOs and CSOs. Thank you so much for your listening.
Well, thank you very much, Comrade Same. We'll briefly ask colleagues on the panel to at least 1 minute add in a voice. But before I do that, just wanted to share our further concerns regarding the developments that have happened. As the nation is aware, we have news that the Bushiris have handed themselves to the police. This was in response to attempts by the law enforcement agents, the police, who pounced on his house trying to find where he was. At that point, they wanted to arrest him last night. We are calling this unfortunate because issues of extradition have a process that has to be followed. It is unfortunate because we are moving towards what we have simply denounced in the statement, to say we need not be bullied as a nation, because we are fully aware of so many South Africans who have left the country or escaped the country to other countries, but they continue until today living in those countries without being demanded to return home. It is unfortunate because, as we have put it clearly, the entire South African government, of course not all of them, but you look at the cabinet, majority of them have been busy tweeting, sending messages on WhatsApp, Facebook and the likes, criticizing Bushiri. That just tells you that there was indeed a vendetta against Prophet Bushiri. Now, handing or arresting him, we're asking on what grounds? What is our interest? Have we exhausted the process that is required for us to take Bushiris to court? Much as we respect the rule of law as a nation and as well as organizations, but sometimes it's not necessary for us to always hide behind the laws and pretend, well, we'll bring him before the competent court of law. As a nation, we needed first to have a thorough, open and frank discussion before we could subject the Bushiri's further torture as we're now currently doing as a nation. This is embarrassing and sad. The number of issues that the Republic of South Africa needed to address before even addressing the issue of Bushiri. As we sit here, we may want to share that we have already written the Minister of Foreign Affairs, where we are demanding that he summons or engages the South African High Commissioner to explain why our president had to be held over 7 hours in South Africa before returning here. We'll be sharing more when we get feedback for that, but those are some of the important issues that we needed as a nation to address before we could rush to arresting the Bushiris and then trying to be dancing to the music of South African government. As we have put it clearly, they are simply saying Bushiri has to return to South Africa to face the music. It's no longer justice. And this is what we are saying as Mablem, to say we do not subscribe to that idea and will not allow Bushiri to be repatriated to South Africa. He's a Malawian, he's home. If anything, the environment has to be conducive for him to return to South Africa. But for now, we object and reject the decisions that the state is going to make against the Bushiris, and we will mobilize the civil society to ensure that that does not happen. I needed to just update you on the latest developments, but allow me to ask my colleagues if they have additions to add before we can entertain questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to make a comment on the statement. My comment is on the persistent threats, death threats, which Prophet Bushiri has been receiving, and we have noticed in the media that Prophet Jirwa of his church, ECG, was murdered in Cape Town. Now, circumstantially, one would ask a question to say, is he wanted for justice or for the death threats to materialize, to be executed? We have seen how the social media in South Africa, how people are angry with him for issues which they should have used legal means to process. So we are worried. I am particularly worried as a person, as a traditional leader, and as a human rights activist. I am worried to say if indeed he goes to South Africa, is he going to survive or is going to be killed? So because the South African government has not guaranteed safety to Prophet Bushiri, I would have liked to urge Malawian government not to send him to South Africa until the guarantees are made to say he will be safe. The law enforcement agents here, they should make sure that all legal instruments are exhausted. Then when the South African government assures us to say he will be safe, then that can be done, but we are not sure he is safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think I wanted to highlight one or two issues that are very critical and paramount. When you look at the issue of fairness and justice, we need to examine that any person that is being perceived to have committed a crime, there is what we call a presumption of innocence until proven guilty. Ironically or unfortunately, what we have seen coming from South Africa, we've removed the element of presumption of guilty and replaced it with the where it is being critically analyzed by the official South African government as Bushiri is a criminal. That already puts a question mark on the fairness of the justice system. And when you look at the whole process, we need to ask a critical question to say, if Bushiri as it was before he came to Malawi, now that is in Malawi, would we have had an impartial trial? Would we have had a fair trial? But by look of things, and looking at the events that have unfolded, it is very unfortunate, and to guarantee that South African government would have guaranteed a fair trial for the Bushiris, fairness, as well as a presumption of innocence. Why do we say this? Number one, if you look at the iterations by the government ministers and officials from South African government, it already jeopardized and prejudiced the Bushiris in their pursuit of justice. There is already a foregone conclusion from a number of people in South Africa who have said these guys are guilty, they must face the music. Now, in South Africa again, when anybody has been to South Africa, when you receive a death threat, it is a serious issue in South Africa. In a country where almost every day there is a homicide occurring. Now, as civil society organizations, that we raised an issue of the threats. When we were approached previously and said, I'm receiving death threats, there have been 4 attempts on my life. And ironically, 2 of those attempts were by the members of the Hawks. We thought that maybe this is a very serious issue that should take forward. When you did the investigation and you even lodged a complaint, we thought that the South African government would take a serious approach to ensure that they guarantee safety of the Bushiris, especially that the people that were being mentioned were from the Hawks. And up to now, it is very surprising that the very same people that complaints were lodged against, they are still part of the trial system, still part of the prosecuting team, still part of the arresting team. That poses a big challenge and a big threat on the life of anyone, even not only Bushiri, but if, for example, any person, you say, these police officers have been threatening me, they've been stalking me, they've told they'll kill me, then they continue coming to provide the arrest and everything. That provides already a ground fertile enough that this person cannot face justice. So we are saying that as things are, it is very critical to understand that we need to address the paramount question to ensure that there is a fair process for the Bushiris to face in South Africa. And we should not throw away the threats that they've been facing, because if we can attest and bring evidence to say the threats were real, because we are part of the investigation on our part, and we even have official documentation and even evidence that we lodged to the South African government. Ironically, the South African government chose not to take action. Maybe because Bushiri was a foreigner. They're saying maybe it is high time that Bushiri is coming as if he provided an opportunity for us as a country to ask questions. That should not have. Sometimes we've been bullied not to ask. Maybe for this time, let me stop there, Chair.
Greetings. Just to add on to what my colleagues have said, as you are aware that the South African government, they acknowledged that the Prophet opened the case in 2018, and that it is the same law enforcers that arrested him and that are continuing this case, which actually shows that it is very hard for him to get a fair trial. Also, my concern is that they are saying that the Prophet did this and did that. Why are they arresting the Prophet as well? So for us, I'm not looking at this as prosecution, but persecution. So this is also a reason for us to ask these questions and to say, can we look into this matter properly so that the Bushiris do get a fair trial? Thank you.
Ziko mwambili titawelenga statement ya mabungwe omwe siyaboma omwe ntchito yake ndikuonesesa kuti ufulu wa anthu sukuponderezedwa komanso chilungamo chikusatidwa pa nkhani ina iliyonse. Ndili ndi mfundo zinayi ngati sizitatu. Mutha kuona kuti pa statement yathu taonesa kunena kuti anthu ena amene ali asogoleri, ena ali ku ndale, ena tengoti ndi aboma, mene aphira mtima ndi nkhaniyi zikutha kuoneseratu kunena kuti munthu isakufuna kulandira chilungamo tikuchiyembekezera tonse. Makhala mukumva kapena kuwerenga kuti maminista apsha mtima kwambiri dziko la South Africa kunena kuti munthu akuyenera kuti abwezedwe mwasangasanga pete pamene pali ndondomeko zimene zimasatidwa. Anthu amene akupsha mtimawa ndi nkhani ya Prophet Bushiri akupangisa kuti ife mabungwe tikadabwe ngati Prophet Bushiri komanso akazi wawo akabwerera ku South Africa atakalandire chilungamo choyenera. Fundo yachiwiri ndizomvesa chisoni monga sotanena mu chikalata chathu kuti boma la Malawi likugwiritsa kapena lili pachaponena kuti let us watch tingoonelera kuti kuli zitha bwanji zimenezi osakhala ndi chiganizo chenicheni pa nkhani ya Prophet Shepherd Bushiri. Zimene tikunena kuti zimenezi ndizolakwika ngati boma likuyenera kutenga wina aliyense amene ali nzika ya Malawi ngati ofunikira kupatula kuti ali ndi udindo wa mtundu wanji. Nkhani ikukhuza mayiko awiri. Boma la Malawi linanika kubwera kumasangasanga ndikufufuza kuti chinachitika ndi chani, kodi vuto ndi chani, nanga wathu ali kuti ndikumaona kuti chilungamo chiyende ngati madzi. Fundo yachitatu, ife ngati amabungwe mosogozedwa ndi Mabrem sikuti tikukhala pano kapena kukamba kapena kuita misasonkhano watu wankhani chonchi ndi cholinga chofuna kuyikira kumbuyo nkhani ya umbanda ndi uchigawenga umene umachitika, koma timafunisisa kuti chilungamo anthu achipeze mopanda kuponderezedwa. Choncho ngati a Prophet Shepherd Bushiri ali ndi mlandu kapena milanduyo ifufuzidwe ndi anthu oyenderera, asatenge gawo pogamula milandu yawo, komanso chilungamo chimene wina aliyense pokhala kuti ndi munthu achilandire. Anzanga kale pano kuti kungomuoneratu kuti wapalamula chako kuti ngoganizira nthawi yomwe kunena kuti amene apeza kaza kuti iya tiyeni tisiyeni khalidwe woganizira oganiziridwa ngati ndolakwa kale. Komanso nkhani yomaliza nkhani ya anzathu azachitetezo aku South Africa omwe amatchedwa kuti ma Hawks ndi anthu amene dziko la South Africa amalemekezedwa kwambiri, koma ndi khalidwe amene awo anaonesa makafuna kutenga makafuna kupindula kapena kumaopseza a Prophet Shepherd Bushiri. Khalidwe lakatangale ndi zina zimene zikutchulidwa panopo ulemu wa uja ife watichokera. Ndetu kunena kuti boma la South Africa liyachotsa anthu amene ali okhuzidwa pa mlandu umenewu kapena pa nkhani yoganiziridwa imeneyi kuti asakhalenso anthu omwe akupita manga Prophet Shepherd Bushiri, chifukwa chonena kuti alikali ndi nkhani zokuti ayankhe. Chokayikisa kuyambira 2018 ngakhale asogolera mabungwe ena kuchokera kuno ku Malawi kupita South Africa anapita kwakambanawo kuti munthu akuopsezedwa ndi kulandira zitozo zosiyanasiyana. Boma la South Africa sinachitepo china chilichonse. Wani pokhuza pomanga kapena poayimisa anthu amene akuganiziridwa kuti akuopseza komanso kulandira kukapempha ndalama mwachinyengo kwa Prophet Bushiri, komanso posatira zimene mfundo imene ya Prophet Bushiri anakanena boma South Africa kuti akuopsezedwa akulandira mamessage kuti aphedwa ndi zinthu zosiyanasiyana. Boma la South Africa sinachitepo kanthu. Chilungamo chimafuna kuti chiziyenda ngati madzi mopanda kusaka kuti uyu si wa dziko lino uyu ndi wa dziko lino. Choncho boma la South Africa likuyenera kumvera mfundo zimenezi ndi kusatira chilungamo. Milandu ili kuyambirimbiri ku South Africa, koma zikuonesa kuti milandu yonse ndiyopanda ntchito, koma milandu yayikulu ndi ya Prophet Shepherd Bushiri. Iya chilungamo siyenda choncho. Ziko kwambiri.
Ziko kwambiri kupasani mpata kanachita bwino kuyankhula nchichewa kuti anzathu so amene imwe nachizungusama mbamve nkhani yayikulu ndonena kuti ife tikufuna chilungamo kuti chiyende ngati madzi, ndipo tikubwerenza kunena kuti ngati dziko tiye tisamapange kuti ngati kumbwambwana kaya kuti pachitika chinthu basi phuma tikufuna tipindule chani, tipeza chani. Ndi chisanzo cha nthunya yemwe anathawira dziko la South Africa zatengera zaka zonse chepera zitatu kuti abwere ku Malawi. dziko la South Africa lomwelo. South Africa kuli anthu amene anathawa mdzikomo mamva inu za maguptas, mungogugula mupeza maguptas amene amatengedwa kuti mwina 70 kwacha ina iliyonse pa 100 imakhala yawo mdziko la South Africa. Pana anathawa mdzikomo zikutha zaka kanti ziwiri kanti zitatu sanayitanisidwe dziko limene anakakhala akukudziwa kumene ali. So khawalipo ambiri amene apalamula dziko la South Africa mpaka na lero sanayitanidwe kapena kuperekedwa. Koma ifeyo phuma kungomva kungolandira walanti kunjenjemera mpaka nakuthamanga kunyumba kwa munthu usiku. Tikuopa chani? Tili pa phuma, tili pa chidwi, tili pa changu chifukwa chani? Tintilole ndondomeko iyende bwinobwino. Chifukwa metu zura ife ngati oda yafika ikweneka ikambidwe mmakabineti mwambapo. A Chief Justice akuziziwa zimenezi, Attorney General akuziziwa zimenezi, nanga President waziziwa. Kungolandira basi phuma titi funa ukanyamula anthu. Tisamapange phuma ngati dziko ndife ozimira patoka. Zamveka bwino amene ankulira zinzanga amunena kuti palibe chooneka chonena kuti akalandira chilungamo ku South Africa. Inu ngati President wathu amugwira anamulesa kunyamuka 7 hours maola 7 iwetu ufuna usafune sonyamuka ku Bushiri mukakambiza Bushiri ndikuti akalandira chilungamo kumene ndeti pachangu kumani pamangisa atipira naye ku court tipira naye ku wala kwa chani kumalawi kunolabira chani. We need to take time to understand decisions that are being made. What are the conditions under which he is going to get an impartial trial? Have the conditions been set and are they adequate for him to stand trial in South Africa, regardless of the threats and the likes? To make matters worse, the case originated when he was still a diplomat. He holds a diplomatic status. What do the Geneva Conventions say about diplomatic status? You don't try a diplomat in the absence of their states. What has the role of government been in ensuring that Bushiri gets justice? It hasn't been there. But all of a sudden, because we have received a notice, then we are rushing to arrest the prophet. This is not right. And we are saying government needs to think over it before they can participate in an unfair treatment of a person. Our posters are making it clear. We need the Bushiris alive to answer trial or to answer their cases. We will not have answers if the Bushiris are dead. And the nation will subscribe to that decision if they send them to South Africa in the current environment. We would love them to stay here and the environment be made conducive before they can be allowed to return to South Africa. With those few remarks, I'd like to thank you and allow a few questions before we can end this debate. Thank you. You introduce yourself, your media house, and state the question. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Once again, my name is Andrew Nyondo from Nation Publications Limited. I have got 2 questions. Maybe the world is wondering on how Bushiri escaped South Africa to Malawi. Did you find out on this, how maybe he escaped South Africa to Malawi? Maybe you have been talking and has given you some insights on how maybe he came and why he escaped South Africa. How did he manage to come to Malawi? Maybe the second question is, Bushiri is answering money laundering charges, but he was given bail according to the laws of Malawi, but also the laws of South Africa, that a person has got a right to bail, which means they gave him the right to bail, but he used that to escape to Malawi. Is that not a contravention of the law? And if you are saying that Malawi should look into all these issues carefully, and if Malawi is to keep a Bushiri, are they not going to contravene the international protocols? We have got the Interpol laws and whatsoever. Is that not going to go on to worsen the relationship between Malawi and South Africa? Thank you. So when we design the African Jawa, sometimes the my friend the deal with the guy set up kwa gokoda kwa office wa andona home affairs mna washta brief madando ano amene mukubanyika pamenepo asiko kwambiri.
The president's spokesperson on Monday during the weekly briefs mentioned that the president will not say anything on this matter. They said that the president will allow the law to take its course. I just want to hear from you, what is your comment on that, since the president is refusing to comment? And again, in the statement, you are saying that if the South African government complies to the demands above, you are requesting the Malawi government to assign a personnel, among others, to join the Bushiri team to ensure that the national interests are protected. I don't understand. What do you mean by this statement? Are you saying that the Malawi government should provide special security to the Bushiris as if they are to return to South Africa?
Thank you very much for the questions. I will just try to tackle one or two, then my colleagues and the chair will also address the other questions. I think the last question by Kathy, I'll leave it to the chair. What do you mean enjoy? What do you mean when you say enjoying? However, let me start by addressing the question. Have you met Bushiri, and did he tell you how did he travel from South Africa to Malawi? We have booked an appointment, civil society and numerous organizations, to meet with Prophet Bushiri, and it's our prayer that is going to be granted this week. We'll be likely going to ask the same question. However, I think just as I noted on watching SAPC, I think in South Africa they're saying, how did he arrive in Malawi? Not answering how did he leave South Africa. But I think paramount is not a question of how did he travel from South Africa to Malawi. Paramount is to understand the issues surrounding his necessitation for him to leave South Africa for Malawi. And that leads to a second question where you're saying he was on bail, and it is by law that he's supposed to attend the trial and everything. We agree with you. However, let us look at the factors that he himself has said has made him leave South Africa for Malawi. He stated that he received death threats. There has been attempts on his life. I will bring it back. We are aware of 2 of such attempts before on his life. We are aware of all the officers that were involved from the Hawks, extortion and even threats. Now, let us not beat about the bush as a country. Ngati Malawi, dziko la South Africa simadutsa tsiku munthu osafa osaphedwa. And dziko la South Africa utakauza ndi kupha amene anapita kuti madzoti palopa patali paipa malo nyambo zapita. Now, with the threats imene Bushiri akhakulandira, pamene no anakatandala kuboma mbomo sachita kanthu. Sisi tanozoti kuti uli pabelo ndisanga kupheyayi. Sisi tanozoti uli pabelo sungazuzike. Ndiye mwina kuona kwathu kuti kamva kwa iwo, koma kuona kwathu kuona ngati iwo angakhala kali pabelo ndi mmene alili chiopsezo cha moyo wawo. Anaona kuti ayi bwanji ndibwerere kumudzi. Koma undilafa kumudzi wondikanine kuti nene ukuku afuna kundipha ndathawa. Sungakhale pamalo kuti pakuyaka moto just because akuza tuli pabelo ndiye utulola kuti upheyayi. Komanso maybe as a result of him coming to Malawi, it has given an opportunity for Malawi government to take a strong stance on this issue. For time immemorial, if as blame, we've talked to the government, the previous government, even the current government, about inhuman treatment that Malawians suffer in South Africa. But oftentimes our governments have been indifferent to the suffering of Malawians out of this country. As if now is as simple as no. Any government and stake in the people, that in their citizens, whether they're in that country or another country. In your emerging South Africa, other kind of Americans in Malawi, you'll be surprised the Americans will send a plane or even intervene immediately. So we are at an advantage now because Bushiri has left South Africa. He's raised very serious allegations, and I'm surprised that people are not looking at the allegations, which are very serious. Looking at South Africa, taking on his life and everything, and how he's been ill-treated, not just by citizens, but the state machinery. You are aware that the Hawks wants to investigate corruption, but a few days ago, the head of the Hawks has been fired from his job, alleged what? Issues of corruption. That he acquired some other opportunity doing corruption. Now, here's Bushiri raising similar allegations on how then end a robber, they want to now they want to kill me. Nobody's asking those questions. Then we still want to trust the same Hawks to continue being part of the prosecuting team. And by the way, I'll state this without fear and favor, for the sake of Malawians here to understand the Hawks. The Hawks in South Africa is one of the racist institutions. I can claim that in South Africa. We even wrote them, even their own operation. And when you understand what Bushiri is saying, you must understand from that perspective. You would rather been arrested by South African police services or another institution because they were treated you fairly, but not the Hawks. And especially that he raised complaint about some individuals within the Hawks, that becomes a bigger threat on his life. And for us, we are saying that even if he was on bail and unfortunately, but he came and he said that for Malawi, this is the cry of a citizen that maybe as a country, as the government, we must heed and start addressing the issues. And by the way, it's not only Bushiri that this man will help him. It's going to help a lot of Malawians who have suffered in silence in South Africa. There are a lot of atrocities that have occurred on our people in South Africa. This needs to be addressed. So I think for them being, let me address those few questions, then the rest of the colleagues can address the others.
Yes, thank you very much. You asked if we have shared these concerns with the Home Affairs. As my brother Bryson has put it, all correspondences who have been writing the South African Human Rights Commission